Okay, today is December 3rd, 2013. This is Brent Björkman, the director of the Kentucky Folklife program based at Western Kentucky University. And I'm lucky enough to be working on a project through the Library of Congress and the American Folklife Center. I was given an Archie Green Fellowship. And we're going to be talking about occupational folk culture with a group of folks here in Kentucky, the park rangers, the federal park rangers that work at Mammoth Cave Park. Today I'm going to be talking with a couple people, and today we're going to start with Johnny Merideth, who has worked his way through this park system. And of course, we're getting the intimate details of life and what work has been like for them over their careers. We're doing a wide range of folks that are soon to be retired, and also people that are currently working within the park system here at Mammoth Cave. So Johnny, could you maybe just start out? Why don't we just talk about a little bit about how you started in with the park? I know that some people have started seasonally and worked their way in, but maybe what's the first thing that ever grabbed you about this park, or your thoughts about I'd like to work at a park? Or
I think that would stem from childhood for me. I came over to Mammoth Cave a lot as a child. And I guess one thing that really sticks in my mind is cemented in there is a field trip I took when I was in third grade. And I may have come with my parents some before or some after, but whatever the reasons, that trip I came in and that field trip in third grade I came in, I remember seeing the rotunda, and I was just blown away that this was basically my own backyard, that I'm standing in a room nearly 1 acre in size and a ceiling 40 feet tall, and here I am playing on the surface as a third grade kid. And at that time I had no idea this was going on underneath of me and that this was here. And I was just really amazed by it, and I was taken by it, and I saw the guys and the gals here, and those park rangers in their gray shirts and their flat hats and their green pants, and to me they really epitomize professionalism and guiding visitors through the cave. And there was just something about the entire experience in childhood and coming over here and seeing this that I guess from that moment on is like I would like to be a park ranger someday. And you kind of toy with ideas as you get older and you get into college, but I really couldn't get that out of my mind. And I went to Western and started undergraduate, and after a couple of years of general ed courses, my advisor said, "Well, Mr. Meredith, you pretty much need to declare a major." And I was like, "Well, okay." He's like, "Well, what do you got?" So she gives me this big list of stuff, and it's like, none of that said much to me. And I thought, well, I was looking at this like, well, what might work to be a park ranger if I want to do this? So I thought, well, to have a geology degree would be good. And I was going to Western Kentucky, and so they were close to each other. And I thought, well, I will major in geology. And my entire intent was to get in geology and maybe continue to try and go for this. And that's ultimately what I did. And when I've been on tours in the past, or even visitors today, and they said, well, did you go to college? I said, yeah. I said, what's your degree in? That's in geology. Oh, well, you work at the perfect place. And they don't understand that I don't work here because I was so into geology, but I majored in geology because I was so into wanting to work here. And that's how that started. And my first day was June 10th, 1996 is how it happened. And that was the second time I applied here. The first time I applied, I did not realize that this was not like working at a retail outlet or even a fast food store, that pretty much the application was the formality before you get hired. That this was really, and apparently I was not the only one who wanted to be a park ranger. It was very clear. There were dozens and dozens, even hundreds of people that applied for 15, 20 jobs over the course of the summer. And the first year I applied, I just didn't get hired. So I said, well, what do I need to do here to boost my resume? And that's when the geology degree, and then that's when I said, well, I'll take an oral communications class, speaking in front of public, that'll help me. And I even worked in another local cave here, Kentucky Caverns, which is now reverted back to its original name, Mammoth Onyx Cave. So by the time the next year rolled around, man, I had, a year of, my geology courses. I had the oral communications course, and I'd had a year experience of taking people through a cave. And so I was able to, I guess, cut the mustard that year, and I got hired, and just pretty much dug in and held on for the most part of that, and that's how it started.
What did you get? You get hired as in interpretation?
Yeah, I got hired as a cave guide, as a park guide here, and I was at that time I think hired in as a GS4 cave guide, and just to me, thought it was just the best job ever. It's like once I got into doing and being a park ranger, I realized, like, wow, why would you really want to work anywhere else,
And this was a seasonal job at that time?
Absolutely, yes. This was a seasonal job from 1996, and I stayed seasonal for close to 8 years. And when I had graduated from Western in 1999, I'd been working here about 3 summers, and there were just no permanent jobs to be had. And so here I am, I'm a single guy, and I was like, well, what can I do here? I know, I'll go to grad school, because that way, I say, well, I can still stay in school, I can still work at the park, you never know what's going to happen, and that way I didn't have to go get a, I guess, quote unquote, what some folks call, a real job. I was still doing what I wanted to do. So anyway, that's what I did, and the grad school, I got through the courses quick, but the thesis stuff took a while, and it ended up, and I got married, and then it got to the point, it's like, okay, being park ranger is all fun and games, and but now I've got somebody else to be responsible for. It's not just me anymore, and to do whatever to make ends meet. And so now there's somebody else. There's a whole new level of responsibility, and I'd been seasonal like 8 years at that point. So I actually mentioned to my wife, I was like, it's like, I think I'm just going to have to stop. I'm going to have to go get a job, which is reliable, dependable, steady income, benefits, things of that sort. And she says, she goes, you've been over there a long time. She goes, just hang in there a little longer. And she says, something will come up. So she didn't have to do a whole lot of arm twisting with it once I found she was cool with it. And so that's what I did. I hung with it, and probably within 6 months or a year, they did have some permanent jobs to open. And they were subject to furlough, but I didn't care. They were permanent jobs, and so I applied, and I got one of those permanent jobs, and I've been here ever since, and as a permanent. And since then, I've moved from a park guide into to the park ranger, and kind of moved on up. And I don't see the cave nearly as much. I see an office and a desk more, but I still love working here. And I've told this story before. And when my wife was pregnant with our second child, I was talking to the doctor. He's like, "Oh, so what do you do for a living?" I said, "Well, I'm a park ranger." He says, "Well, do you like it?" I said, "Well, beats working." And so he kind of got a chuckle out of it. And what I meant by that is when you love what you do, you never really have to work a day in your life. And one of the guys who just retired here said his dad gave him some good advice. Says, you're going to be doing something for 30 years. Make sure it's something you enjoy. And I thought, well, that's good advice, and something to pass on, perhaps to my children. But the doctor knew what I was talking about, because he said, my dad was a park ranger in Alaska. And he's like, yeah, he said it was the best job he ever had. And I hear that a lot. I see, visitors that come today and just shoot the breeze with them. And I hear all the time, I had a job as a seasonal park ranger once and I loved it. Or, man, when I retire, I want to come and be a park ranger and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm. You spoke about movement through this system as a guide, and then a ranger. And that's one of the things I've been interested in, and I'm trying to explore with different individuals. Can you tell me about what is a park? When I was writing the narrative for this grant, in my mind I was seeing all these different people with education and interpretive and biology and search and rescue or law enforcement. They all come together to do this job called a park ranger, but maybe you can tease it out a little bit. You mentioned guide, and then now I'm a park ranger.
Yeah.
Is there like duties or
It's kind of more based on your grade levels and series and things of that sort. I think, to the general public, a park ranger is anybody in the green and the gray, period. Whether you work for facilities management or whether you work for the Division of Interpretation, whether you're in law enforcement or whatever the case may be. I think most people, when they see the green and the gray, you are automatically a park ranger. We've got folks here that are, IT specialists. We have visual information specialists, public information officers. We all kind of wear that umbrella. Park guides are typically what we have here, though there are, first line interpreters. They're in the field every day. They're interpreting. And then the park ranger series folks like myself and some of my office mates upstairs, and Chuck and Leslie and Kathy, it's just happened to have a park ranger series. That's kind of the title that they give it. But when I was a park guide, and I was a frontline interpreter, I probably never felt more like a park ranger ever than I did right then. Because I was doing what I saw all those park rangers do when I was a kid, and the title is just a title. But what you feel when you're doing that, and that's certainly much more. And I don't think there's any guide out here that really feels that they're not park rangers, and I don't consider them not park rangers. They certainly are to me, very, very much so, and no matter what a title says. And so for me, moving up kind of in the system here, I was very, very kind of an oddball in the sense that I never worked at any other park. I've been to a lot of other parks, I've seen a lot of other parks, but I've never had one I wanted to trade for. And beyond this work, there's also another, entirely different component to who you see here in a green and gray. I have a life outside of here, and everything I love and everything I care about's here too. And so, if I moved up through the ranks and went from a guide to a ranger, great. If I never did, who cares? I was still living my dream. I was being a park ranger. So, so that makes me odd in many ways, because a lot of folks have to move from park to park and work seasonally. A winter here, maybe summers at Mammoth Cave, winter in the Everglades, or summers at some park, winters at another park, and things of that sort, and kind of get their foot in the door, make a lot of contacts, kind of prove themselves to a lot of different people, and just constantly apply for jobs. So I'm kind of the oddball in that situation, of kind of just being planted here and really unwilling on my behalf to go anywhere, and just feel very thankful and blessed to be where I am.
Do you think that working environment has changed over time? You're very thoughtful. You think you've probably probed all your older colleagues and they've come through the ranks, or is this a special park that might allow you to do those things with, or has this changed from, like your example was Everglades to here, to maybe going out west or something and having to do this transitory kind of thing? Do you think that's changed over time, or?
I think that a lot of the ways people still get in the day is just constantly having to move and to go from place to place to place. And if I wanted to move up and go beyond whatever I am now, I could apply to go somewhere else, but I really don't have any desire to do so. So do I think that kind of part of it has changed? Kind of in my view, I don't think that really has changed, but what does make this park unique and very different that I do see is just the unwavering dedication, it seems, that our seasonal staff possess. And I've been to a lot of trainings, nearly coast to coast in different situations, and when I start talking about the kind of the guide culture here at Mammoth Cave, they're just like, what? You've got a seasonal that's worked there for like 10, 12 years, they don't go anywhere else? Like, no. They don't want to. They love being here. And I would be in the exact same boat, I was in that boat and had still been in that boat probably, whatever the case may be. So I think this park is different in that fact that and I've had colleagues come in and visit, and they're like, so, how many of these folks in here are permanent? It's like, actually, none of these people you see are permanent. Like, what? It's like, these are seasons. Like, been here like 8 years, 10 years, 12 years. And it just blows their mind that there's that kind of loyalty and dedication to the staff at Mammoth Cave. And that's one thing that makes it very, very different. I'm sure guides, park rangers, they have bonds with whoever they're with. But when you have that bond and you continually stay around those same group of people, I think that just intensifies it. And a lot of that bond is built around the big hole down the hill there. Just everybody has that core in common. You'll find all different kinds of beliefs and all kinds of opinions for whatever things. But one thing you just nearly find consensus on is like they pretty much all love the cave.
So these loyal seasonal colleagues that you work with forever, what do they do on the off season?
Some will go to school. Some will just try to find odd jobs. Some, if they've worked enough during the course of the year, they'll try to draw unemployment and scrape by and do whatever. I've got a very good friend, when we're not here, he's got his hand in a lot of other jobs and occupations to kind of tide him over till he gets back here. And so, when I was seasonal, it was kind of the same thing. It's like, I was in school, you just do whatever you could to make it work, to keep doing what you want to do.
So tell me about the first day of work when you tried and then you finally got hired on. If that's a memory, or either that, or take me through one of those first days of work during that first year.
I very vividly remember the first day, and it was not like maybe people might envision. I was in a room all day, and there were different supervisors that would come in, and they would do different training sessions. I remember very distinctly my supervisor at that time. She came in, and because she had on her outfit, we're all in plain clothes, we're all in civilian clothes. None of us have uniforms at this point. We're all just kind of sitting together in this room, and she starts at the White House and the president, and then filters all the way down the lineage and the chain to show where we are in that branch. So I remember that. And I remember the superintendent coming in during those weeks of training and talking about himself and where he was from and how he was here. And, the first, 2 weeks of this, I would say, very little was actually spent inside of the cave. And it was very clear that there was a lot more than just knowing a lot about Mammoth Cave and being able to tell that to people that was entailed in this job. You had to know a whole lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. If there's an injury in the cave, who do you call? In what order do you call? What information do you need to have about this person? What if there's a lost child? What if there's a fire evacuation? You've got to get first aid CPR certified. Just on and on and on, all these other things that you just never have any insight into without being in here. So those were the very first 2 weeks of what it was like. As far as beyond that, I remember the first time I was, I don't want to say forced, but let's say strongly coerced to talk in front of a group. You kind of got a window, a grace period. And if you haven't spoken in front of 120 people that you do not know, and they're all looking at you as the expert, it can be a bit unnerving if you've not done that or not accustomed to it. And I was with this lady here, and she'd been here, a few years, and she's like, Johnny, I think you can do a stop today. And I hadn't seen, too many programs. I was like, well, I don't know. All I had was a name tag. Still didn't have a uniform.
A stop means a stop and talk.
Yes, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, let me clarify. A stop would be along the cave tour. We stop in various areas, and we'll present some sort of information to the visitor. And so she said, I think today you can do a stop. I was like, well, I don't know. I was like, but whatever. So she kept going. So I was like, okay, well, we'll give it a try. I felt more out of place because I didn't even have a uniform yet. All I had was a name tag that said who I was, and that was it. And I remember having to give that talk for 120 people and then turn it back over to her. And so it was nerve-wracking, one, to not be in uniform and talk, and then number two is like they're looking at you like I'm supposed to know everything, and obviously I did not. And the longer I work here, the more I realize the less and less I know every day, because there's just new stuff all the time that comes out about this place. So, but yeah, you get that big cardboard box. I remember that. You open it up, and there's your gray shirt. There's your pants. You put that name tag on it. You got your brown socks and your brown shoes, and your flat hat, that iconic flat hat. And you've got the hat band that goes around it that you have no idea in the world how to tie that and get it to look like. So you're looking to somebody else to kind of help you out with that. And you're kind of showing up in uniform. And when you show up in uniform, I mean, people certainly do expect you to know everything. They don't know that I've been here 2 weeks or 20 years. They don't know. They know that I work at Mammoth Cave and I should know what's going on. So even today when we have new seasonals that come in, they're like, oh, can I wear my uniform tomorrow? I was like, well, you can, but let me just tell you, if it were me, I might wait another day or two, because the second you put that on, you're expected to know everything about this place. And I said, so if it were me, I would probably wait another, maybe let this first week end, and then maybe at the beginning of that next week, start putting it on and go from there, because you got to start somewhere. But you're so gung-ho, to be in and be that person.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that made me think about something that folklorists are always interested in, is the informal culture of working your way up in any kind of job, and the mentorship and or the insider folk knowledge of hazing or little jokes you play on one another. Or, I mean, you were giving insight into that younger, or that newbie that said, do you have a name for people that are new until a certain time, or is there a certain kind of rite of passage that you all think of, that you feel comfortable in sharing?
A lot of times we refer to them as rookies. It's their rookie year here. They've never been here before. We even have a Rookie of the Year award that we give here. And our guides, as I was talking about, there's kind of this, kind of bond between them. Every year we have a guides picnic, and that's, anybody in the park can come, and it's not like a guides only club by any means, and it's open and inviting everybody. But a couple of things they do is, one is they have a Rookie of the Year, and we just started that about 4 or 5 years ago, I'm guessing. And basically it's voted on by your peers. Like, here's our new folks. You guys have seen them. Who's Rookie of the Year? We have a Guide of the Year. And then you have a Research of the Year award we call the Ed Bishop Award. So there are certain awards that we give out annually to the folks here. And the Guide of the Year and the Rookie of the Year, I think to those that receive those mean a lot, because they're not given by an authority figure or management, and those are always welcome accolades, but you're getting it from the people that you work with day in and day out. So knowing that your coworkers that you're side by side with every day think so much of you is pretty humbling. And so that award generally, we give those out kind of toward the end of the program. It's kind of like Best Actor of the Year at the Oscars. You kind of just give it out last. People want to know who it is, but you kind of hold off. Yeah.
Who makes those decisions? The collective of the
guide force. Mm-hmm. So all the guides get together, and in fact, my buddy Chuck DeCroy, who I work alongside with, he and I, get the ballots ready. We get them out, and we'll do the counting of the ballots, and then he generally calls the award place and has them print up the little plaque, and we give them a little. Well, it's not a little. It's a scale lard oil lantern. It's silver. It's got their name on it. The date. It says Guide of the Year. So yeah, there's we do that. As far as hazing goes, I don't think there's a statute of limitations on hazing and how long do you work here. That seems to just be fairly perpetual. People have found sometimes we have to wear different hats in our job. Some days we're wearing this and the flat hat, and then we have to change. Maybe we're doing a crawling tour later with a helmet and a headlight, and people have left items laying out in the lounge. They might find their boots in the freezer. They might find some personal item, like their flashlight in the freezer, or it has been known that people would take note cards and they would keep them in their lockers, kind of keep their information straight, and then people change the information on the note cards, just little things like that kind of throw folks for loops. So yeah, there's, hazing and, but nothing, nothing malicious by any means. It's all in fun, and the folks here they've all got such a good sense of humor, for the most part, and we go from there. So, but yeah, we just have a lot of fun.
So in '96, I'm thinking about maybe how equipment in the cave has changed, whether it's lighting systems. Certainly the lamps, you alluded to the fact that they used to burn oil in lamps, but that was way back.
Yeah.
And you've been here just since '96. I don't know if you can speak to that. Maybe there's been changes in equipment or protocol in the caves since you've been here?
You think of the cave as almost this kind of timeless place, and in some ways it is. I've not been here forever, but I've been here long enough to see a tremendous number of changes regarding the cave. When I first got here, we were giving tours on all dirt trails everywhere. The Rotunda still had dirt trail. Broadway had a dirt trail. Rafinesque had dirt trail. Those have been replaced now with these kind of concrete pavers, kind of leveling out the surface. We've just had a big handrail restoration. We replaced all the handrails with stainless steel. All the lighting that was in the cave when I started has all been removed and replaced with a new lighting system. The tower in Mammoth Dome that I remember climbing many, many times it's been taken out and it's been replaced. So the cave looks very different, I think, through the eyes of a first-year seasonal today compared to when I first came here. In fact, there's a lady that works here, and she saw a picture laying out on the table the other day. She was like, "Oh, what is that?" And she was like, "Oh, that looks so cool." And it was just a picture of Broadway, but there was no pavers, there was no nothing. I was like, "Oh." So then I felt like the old timer. I was like, "Oh yeah, well when I started, we still had that dirt trail." And I got to thinking, it's like we often reminisce and become nostalgic when we think of days gone by. Whether it's the days of the lanterns and things of that sort, or just the way, or the old trails that the guides had. And I realized that sometimes I've gotten so hung up and like it'd be so cool to be back then and see what the cave was like, that you miss on now and what will be nostalgic later. It's like, those dirt trails are gone in many parts of those in the cave, and over the years that will probably continue as they continue to rehabilitate the cave trails. And so I have very fond memories just walking down those old dirt trails, and just part of the cave when I first got here. So I've not been here tremendously forever, but yeah, there's been a significant number of changes in the cave just since I've been here.
As part of the interpretation of the cave, there seems to be a lot of tradition and reverence for that, and for people that came before you, and the history of the guiding itself and the rangering itself. Is that something you talk about or is it pretty much this is on your tour, showing the site of a particular site, or do you allude to that in any way? Maybe it's not during the cave tour, but is there interpretive stuff where you talk about the guides that came before us?
Sure. I don't know if it would be possible for visitors to go today on a historic tour and not hear about Stephen Bishop, who was a guide who was here in the 1830s through the mid 1850s. So from about 1838 to 1857 he was here, and he was enslaved. And I think one reason we have such high regard for this guy is just what he was able to accomplish. This is a guy who discovered miles and miles of Mammoth Cave, crossing the subterranean rivers to unlock miles of more cave on the other side. And probably during his tenure here, he over doubled, if not close to tripled the known. So So here's a guy who did so much, and we still see his signature all over the cave today. And it's like, I am where Stephen was. And there's a date, like, 1850 whatever, or 1830 whatever, or 1840 whatever. And it's like you see all these really cool dates, and then you realize this guy was here probably many times, oftentimes alone. And the only way he had into the cave was the historic entrance. I did not come in that way, and I'm still miles from where I came in, and here's this guy. And it's not just him, but there are certainly other guides who have been here in the past, and that history lives and breathes in Mammoth Cave. Those signatures are there. The cave's just a time capsule, and you can't escape it in many, many places that you go. It's all around you. And so if there really was a kind of a way to go back in time here, the closest way to do it would be go inside the cave. And you can almost just recreate the exact conditions and see the cave and the walls and the ceiling as they were when those folks were there. So I think a lot of people here have a deep respect for the guides who were here before, a deep interest in the visitors who were here before, and certainly those sort of things are still talked about on cave tours. And we stop at a place called Jenny Lynn's Dining Table and often talk about how people ate here in the 1800s. And what's cool is it's not just a story I'm telling you. Here's a chicken bone. Here's a broken piece of wine bottle. Here's all these things that they're still here, 150 years later that we can see.
So the visitors must love that. But I think about you talking about the camaraderie of the people that work here. It must be something extraordinary that bonds you, right?
I think so. And, even when you look back at Mammoth Cave, we were talking about, Stephen Bishop, being enslaved. Matt and Nick Bransford were also enslaved individuals here. And of course, they ultimately got their freedom. But when you start reading about the Black history here at Mammoth Cave, it wasn't just they were ostracized by any means. You've got examples of where, some of the Bransfords and, Frank Berry, another guide here, they'd hang out at each other's houses. And Frank Berry was a white man. So that's not something that really commonly happened, in this part or certainly further south from here. You didn't have that kind of bond between the races of that sort, but you seem to have that here at Mammoth Cave, and at least on many, many levels. And it's cool. You go to the courthouse and you can see, who sold, individuals' land. You got, white folks selling black folks' land and getting stuff set up. So, the community, particularly the guide community, I think here seems to have always been, for the most part, very, very close-knit for probably since it started, it seems. So yeah, there's something about the place that just kind of bonds you to the folks that are around you.
So you've kind of risen the ranks, and you're happy where you are. I mean, you love this place. You'd rather not move around. And I understand that you're in a supervisory position now, and you're a certifier for the Interpretive Development Plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that goes on here, or is that a National Park Service contribution that you give as part of your job? Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, the Interpretive Development Program was started about 20 years ago, and up until that time, I guess interpretation was just something people did. It wasn't really a recognized career per se. And I think, historically speaking, even at Mammoth Cave, in probably the 20s, 30s, 40s, and things of that sort, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever. A lot of the programs were tailored like, well, this is a saltpeter mining operation. We extracted nitrates here. We made gunpowder for the War of 1812. So many Kentuckians fought in this battle, and on and on and on. And you tell people about it, and you go to the next stop. And so that was kind of the way, I guess, quote unquote, interpretation was done. And it was really just giving folks information about the place. But every now and then, like, people would hear programs and they would just somehow be outstanding. They were saying the same thing, but they were saying it in a different way. So all these folks got together, and these were pretty much frontline interpreters. These weren't like people that sat in office all day. These were frontline interpreters. And they got together, and I guess over the course of an extended period of time, had a lot of debate, probably had a lot of arguments, probably got very heated, it got very passionate. But they finally came down to realize that all of these really good interpretive programs had certain things in common with each other. And that is that they were expressing why the park or the place was significant. They were telling a specific story that ran the gamut of the program from beginning to end. It was a thread you could follow and flow, and that it gave a sense of relevancy to the place. And so they developed a number of, competencies based on this kind of rubric, if you want to say. And they've each one got their own kind of specific rubric, but it kind of all revolves around that idea. Mm-hmm. And so what happened is they had these competencies, there was 10 of them, and they were released. And you could submit to the interpretive development program. And basically what you would do is you would maybe tape yourself giving a talk. So you go for the interpretive talk competency. Somebody would film you. You would ship it off to Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry would take it and give it to 2 kind of certifiers, people that had gone through this very rigorous training to evaluate these programs. They would independently evaluate it. They would enter their comments, and then they would collectively get together, look at each other's comments, discuss their comments, and either agree or disagree that this meets standards for what we're looking for in an interpretive program. And then if it was, then you got a certificate back or a letter back saying that you met certification standards. Now, I'll just tell you about Johnny. And that is, when the idea of this came around, I didn't have any, and I mean any buy-in in this. I thought this was a bunch of garbage. I thought this was just a bunch of touchy-feely mumbo-jumbo that made no difference in the world. Okay? Nobody probably had more resistance to this thing than I did. So what changed a little bit for me in this is my chief of interpretation was downstairs, and he was talking about this interpretive development program and that it was going to be around for a while. And it was interpretation for now and for the future. And as a seasonal, I thought, well, it might behoove me to get certified in some of these competencies. So if a permanent job does come open, I will have the most, I'll have the most I can put on my resume that I can. So that's what I did do. I started to work, and I submitted one for informal contacts, and I was certified. I still didn't have any buy-in in it, and I just didn't have any buy-in because I thought, the folks are coming, I'm giving them correct information. They're filling out comment forms saying that they really enjoyed it, how much they enjoyed me. They're applauding at the end of the tours. They're laughing at my one-line cave jokes. They're having a good time. I'm doing my job. I'm doing what I'm here for. So that was my mindset at that time. And so I went ahead and I got certified. I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll put it on a resume. But so I actually got hired permanent, and one of the things on there was like knowledge of the interpretive development program. So not only did I know about it, I had demonstrated success in it. And I think that probably played a part in helping me get a permanent position, and I don't think this was lost on a host of seasonals across the service. They saw this was as a way in. So when I got hired in, Mammoth Cave does more interpretation than the Great Smoky Mountains, the most visited national park. We do more than the Everglades. We do more than Shenandoah combined. We do more interpretation here than all those other places put together. And our chief and our chief of program services thought, since we do so much interpretation, it would just seem good to have a certifier on our staff. And so I think Joy may have approached me with this, or there was an email circulated. I was permanent, but I thought, well, this will just only help boost the resume. So I expressed interest, like, I'll go through training, I'll do whatever, that's fine, I'll do it, whatever. So I did. I expressed interest to her, and you had to apply for the program and try to critique something, a writing or whatever, in the best way that you knew how. And I got accepted into this program. And so it was 2 full weeks at Harper's Ferry. And if interpretation had a boot camp, it's that program. So I just want to make this clear. I went with no buy-in, even though I demonstrated in it. And at the end of those 2 weeks, and even today, it's just almost shameful that I was ever in that state of mind, because when you got up there, all you did was like view programs and critique them. They would intentionally give you really, really good ones. They would also give you some that obviously did not make standard. Programs were the same as far as the information goes, but one would stand head and shoulders above the other one. And the ones that stand head, basically those people who were actually interpreting, who were creating opportunities for me to connect with what they were saying and where they were, made me care more about where they were. I'd never visited there. I've seen a program, I don't know how many programs I've seen about Grand Canyon condors. I've seen bunches of them, oodles of them. And they all say the same thing, but there was one, man, this guy, he delivered this program. It was like, that makes me care about the condor. And that's what we want to strive for, because the end game of what we do as interpreters is we want to give people a pathway for stewardship of the parks. I'm not going to force anybody on there. Just like, I want to tell you a story about this place in the most engaging way possible, so that when you get in your car, it's great that you might know more about Mammoth Cave, but it's more important to me that you care more about Mammoth Cave. I don't care if you remember my name. I don't care if you don't laugh at a joke. In fact, I hardly ever tell any of those anymore. My whole outlook, perception of what my job is, I guess, really became clear. It's like, I'm not here just to give info and answer a few questions and hope people are smiling and having a good time and let them get back on the road for some ice cream. Like, I'm here, again, to tell the story in an engaging way that hopefully when they care, they will have had the opportunity to care more about this place when they leave. And so that's kind of my thoughts on interpretation and what I strive to do. Guiding or giving information is easy. Interpreting is not. So when you go down to the saltpeter works, I don't want to be that guy that's saying, we took nitrates out of here, we made saltpeter for the War of 1812, we did all this, and go through the whole process. Because you might have a handful of people who might find that interest. What more people might find of interest is that industry of saltpeter here at Mammoth Cave and other caves in this area and in this country. But that industry right there has completely shaped the face of our American society today. And if you want to stretch it in many ways, help shape the face of the world. So that's something that all visitors can do. No matter where you're from, what happened here 200 years ago has been important for all of us. And here's why. And if you can tell that in a way, people will walk away from there hopefully more engaged about it and really appreciate what they saw, as opposed to seeing, wow, that was a lot of hard work, and just and just leaving, that it means something to them. And that's what I want people to leave. When they leave here, I want them to mean something to them. So yeah, I became a certifier. I've been doing that probably for, I guess, close to 6 years now. And enjoy it. And it's good to have a room full of folks that you're with, and you're all on the same page and know what interpretation is, and can just openly talk about it. And there's still times I was given a critique. I hate saying that, but I was giving, we were meeting after an audit. I'd audited a specific guides program here. That's what we have to do, is in our kind of position here. I have to go on a tour, listen to it, and go from there. So we're sitting down in the audit, and I said, well, you did good, you did all this, and explain, is there a way you could tell what you're doing and just have just some idea you're trying to get across so people be more engaged? And he goes, look, Johnny, understand what you're saying. He goes, I get it. He says, but I'm not for sure that's what people are looking for. He says, people are driving down the road, they're seeing the brown sign, Mammoth Cave sounds cool, let's stop in, let's take a tour. As soon as we get done, we'll have some ice cream, and we'll keep going down to Florida. He said, I think that's what they're doing. I don't think they're doing this. And I looked at him and went, you are exactly right. That is what they're doing. They don't know nobody's going down the road going, I'm looking for a memorable experience where I can care. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that. And so what you want to do is when they get here, is your job is to give that to them. They don't know to ask for this. And again, so that when they leave here, they can care more about it. They are wanting something of value here, and just spending time with their family is something of value. When you're here, give them more. Give them reasons to care about this place. And what's particularly rewarding is that sometimes, and even on a couple of occasions, he's come back and goes, I've thought about that talk a lot. He goes, I need to give them a reason to care about here, and not that they just know more about this place and that they had a good time, but that they do care more about it. So just hearing people become more aware and more cognizant of what the job really truly entails is kind of rewarding in and of itself.
Well, you're a mentor. That's great.
Well, I think we all kind of help mentor each other. We all have our own strengths, and you can't be knowledgeable and an expert in everything Mammoth Cave. If I wanted to know something about, history, particularly the 1819, Chuck's upstairs, I ask him. If it's archaeology, I got Dave Spence. I think we all help mentor each other, and we've all got our own niches that we can help each other do that to just continually become better over time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about what advice would you give somebody starting in the job field today, but you've kind of been weaving around that, but do you have some kind of a thought if somebody says, hey, Johnny, I've been watching you and I know that you know a lot, and what can I do to be the best I can be?
Well, it depends on first of all, ask them, what is it that you want to be, and if it's something that I can give feedback on, I certainly will. If not, I will direct them to somebody who will be able to give them more. But you're talking about just strictly being a guide, I want to be the best I can be, or
probably coming. Yeah.
Yeah, if you had somebody new, like, what can I do to be the best I can be? I think for the most part, you don't have to browbeat these people in here to have a better work ethic, because they love being here anyway. But to be the best you can be here, it's certainly more than being a good interpreter. I mean, to be the best you can be, you certainly need to be one. And there are, courses and online things and, just feedback or directions or things I can give for folks at that level. But always, I think another thing is, like, for guys that just really want to be stellar, and I think a lot of them have this mentality now. There's a guy out here, and I've seen him come in or be here, and he doesn't feel well. He's having an off day. But you go outside, man, you just never know it. The guy's smiling. It's just like it's his first tour ever. And I'm, it doesn't really matter how long you've been here. At certain points, you're just like, wow, I got to do another historic today. That's my 8th one this week or something. And you just kind of ask the guys, like, hey, man, it's like, I know every time you go out. I said, I'm just amazed. I said, it's just like your first trip every time. He says, I figure it's like this. He goes, this may be the only chance any of these people will ever have to see Mammoth Cave. He says, and I got to give it to them like it's their last one. So basically just treat every visitor like this is the only experience they'll have here, and just, give your all to them, give the best programs you can give, be upbeat. And I'm just sometimes amazed at the resiliency of our staff. We've had coworkers to pass away during the work day. Like, they're on their off day. Maybe they passed away at home that morning. We find out about it. I mean, people you care about and you love and you've worked with for a long time. It's like, and it's easy if you don't have to face people. You kind of have a little mourning period about it. But man, when you're the frontline guy, there's none of that going on. It's like you've got 120 people who don't even know this person that you're grieving over, and honestly, they're not here for that. They are here for the cave, and you've got to just watch them go out and just perform and give their best, and they put on their happy faces as if the world's just planet in roses and there's butterflies flying everywhere. It's just like everything's great. So yeah, it's sometimes being a guide can be tough, because being a guide is it's like we were talking. It's like there's other jobs and functions in this park where if someone is sick, where they don't have to come in, well, maybe this meeting can be postponed, or we could change this or change that. You can't do that with a cave tour. I mean, it's not even like airlines. It's like, well, we can just cancel this flight. I mean, that hardly ever happens. I mean, you got 120 people. They're ready to go inside the cave. They've made plans 6 months ago. They bought their tickets 3 months ago, and they're here. And this tour is leaving now. So you got to get somebody. The show must go on, and you have to go out and you have to give it to folks.
So you mentioned being married earlier in the interview, and then alluded to the fact you have a couple of children.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things I talked to one of our mutual guide friend, who was Joy, who was helping me conceptualize some of the things I wanted to learn. What about families, and are your kids at an age where they're intrigued by what you do? Do you see them going in your footsteps? Too early to tell?
Well, I've got one that's 3, and so he just pretty much making footsteps everywhere he goes. He's just going everywhere. The other one's 8, and he certainly enjoys coming over to Mammoth Cave, and we came over, I think, last August during bat night, and he got to wear goggles and see bats flying in the dark, but with these cool night vision goggles, and you got to ask scientists questions, and you got to hear bats kind of squeaking and making noise. So, I mean, he loved that. I've taken him into the cave, on different occasions. He really, really likes it. As of right now, he wants to be a chemist. So, but he's 8. Things change. As far as like families go, one thing I do want to try to instill to them is, right now they don't know how deep their roots are here. And I did not know how deep my roots are here until I started working here. I think because my family was local and we grew up here, it's just, well, there's the cave over there. I'm sure there's somebody living next to Churchill Downs. Like, yeah, it's a Churchill Downs over there. Like, let's go somewhere and do whatever. But there's the caves here and whatever. And oh yeah, so and so used to work out there. But like, I just had no idea of a lot of things growing up. I did have a great uncle who drove one of the buses out here, and I had another cousin that worked in the snowball room for concessions. Another cousin, I've had cousins over years work for concessions at different times. And then my great-grandfather used to clean off the old wooden stairs at the new entrance, which I really didn't know about till later. And then so I started working in the cave, and next thing you know, it was like, oh, well, my granddad was telling me the other day, he says, yeah, it's been years since I've been in Great Onyx. It's like, you been in? He said, you been in there? He goes, yeah. He goes, I helped pack wood in there to build the staircase that went down the rivers. Like, stuff you just don't even know. And it's stuff I probably never would have known. I was like, well, no kidding. And my grandmother, just a few years ago, she produced this literally shoebox full of these black and white photos. And she was like showing me pictures of my like great aunt and great uncle, who are out there at the Floyd Collins Crystal Cave when it was probably operated. He was guide. They were living in a little house out there. She's got all these wonderful pictures. It's like, wow, I did not know all that. Had another great-grandfather that was the last pastor out here at the Mammoth Cave Baptist Church. So that's stuff that my family did know. But when I worked here, you sometimes get in charge to help coordinate special events. And one of the things that I was asked to help choreograph or coordinate was the genealogy weekend. And we had it in Brownsville. And so that year, there was a big turnout because genealogy is big here. And it's big because a lot of the families that used to live in the park, they have descendants that are living just immediately outside of the park. It's kind of one of those things like they don't want to lose those stories. So the park in many ways is bittersweet. It's kind of sad that these folks had to give up their homes.
And that was in the year?
That was in probably through the late 20s and 30s. So folks were having to give up their homes in order for this to become a national park. But one of the bright spots is that because they were losing their homes, they were going to hold to those stories. And so people have managed to keep hold of these things. And because of that, I mean, we can put together maps like you see up here, a picture of the park with where all the landowners were and their acreages. And people are doing all kinds of research today, putting all this genealogical information in databases and mapping and stuff that would never have happened here had this not been a park. They're not doing it outside the park. They're doing it here. GPS and cemeteries, getting all the information for the headstones, making all this stuff. So these are all projects that are going on, again, that never would happen here, so that these descendants and even their descendants can come back and find their ancestors. It's just truly, truly remarkable. All these communities that we can find on those maps, we can know about them, research them. There's been all kinds of communities that disappear outside the park. They're just gone. And you just don't know much about them unless you find one of the aged locals. So as far as that goes, I was doing this genealogy thing, and there happened to be another Meredith there. And he said, "Are your parents," and he named them, he said, "Are those your parents?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Is this your granddad?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Is this your grandmother?" It's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, I'll give you this book." And it was called The Ancestors of Johnny Merideth. What he did is he had all this genealogical information, and he had basically just typed my name in it, and it pulled out me and my entire ancestry, like back to the 1600s or something. It's like, here. So like, man, people spend lifetimes getting this, and I've gotten it just for showing up and helping coordinate this event. So Joy Lyons, who is my supervisor, she says, "Let me look at that book." So she's looking at it. She's all about history, and she's looking through it, and she's looking through it, and she's looking through it. And she goes, "You related to this guy?" It's like, "Well, I guess I am." It's like, "But do you know who this is?" It's like, "No, I got nothing." She said, "Well, this guy was one of the early people who leased Mammoth Cave." It's like, "Really?" So it turns out that this guy is, his name is Robinson Shackelford. He's my great-great-great-great-grandfather, who in 1837, along with Archie Miller Jr., kind of helped lease out Mammoth Cave. And they were charging people $1 a day. His son, Oliver Perry Shackelford, he's got in these files sitting next to me, there's a good 2 different papers that he wrote about his life in this area. Well, man, so I can read about my ancestors owning and operating Mammoth Cave or doing work in this area, and they lived just down the road from us, from where we are right now. No idea any of this was going on. His grave, my great-great-great-great-great-granddad's grave, it's right down the road. And I was able to go to it. I was able to see it. It's like, it's just mind-blowing. So I've been able to learn more about me by becoming a park ranger and being here. And again, that's stuff I would never know. And so that was on my mother's side, and on my dad's side, I think if you open an Emmons County phone book, you'll find pages and pages of Merediths. And there were a lot of them that lived in today what is within the boundaries of the park. Some were cave guides, in the 1860s, and it's it's just really wild. It's like that I've got ancestry here that I can trace that far back, that predates even the in fact, Oliver Perry Shackelford notes in that book that his brother and Archibald Miller Jr. helped show those guides the routes. I'm like, so here's my great uncle helping, and this other fella helping show Stephen and Matt and Nick the routes of the cave. It's just mind blowing. And so I mentioned all this to my parents and my mother. She's like, I had no idea we were even related to those folks. Of course, that's so far back. It's not, a lot of people can't name all their great grandparents. You got 8 of them. How many can name all 8? Much less when you're getting that far back, how many you've got. So that's one of the things that I want my children to know. It's like, well, this is not just some big green island over here. This is a place that is living and teeming with your roots here, and stuff I didn't know growing up, and I just didn't have the benefit or knowledge, and none of my family did. But it's just been truly amazing. That certainly, regardless of what they want to do, I want them to know where they've come from, and things of that sort. So, I've got a trip trying to get it where the weather clears up and the road's not wet to go out and see my great granddad's home place. There's a local historian here who goes, yeah, I know exactly where it was. He goes, we can go to it. He goes, I'll show you. So again, stuff you just never would know, and stuff I never would have known had I not been here. And I'm not alone in that. There are other guides here who have found out that their interest or their roots here are much deeper than just running out on the surface, but they go down deep as the cave itself.
I was just going to ask you if you had anything else to say. That was very captivating.
Oh.
Yeah. Did you want anything? Did you want to say anything that I haven't asked you? I know we've only had about an hour together. But...
Yeah, I'm good. I'm open to talk about. I can talk about Mammoth Cave all day. We could keep it rolling.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, you're very welcome. Very welcome, and enjoyed it.